to the nearest hundredth, so this sort of implies that this is going to be a calculator question. Maybe not. Solve the equation. And so in A, again, we're going to combine like terms. I'm going to move my coses to the right, my numbers to the left. So I just subtracted cos on both sides. I added 4 to both sides. Then I can get cos by itself by dividing by 3. Once we have cos by itself, we can find our reference angle. I'm going to pull up the calculator here. Because cos is the one that's really important. Have a look here. If I do cos inverse of negative 2/3, which will not be my reference angle, notice how different the answer is when I do positive 2/3. So the reference angle is 0.841. And maybe I'll just put this note in again. For reference angles, that's always positive. And now that we have our reference angle, cos was negative, so we would go in quadrants 2 and quadrants 3. So again, I'm going to go back to my calculator here, and I like using the store button, so I'm going to store this as x, because in quadrant 2, I would do pi minus my reference angle. And in quadrant 3, I would do pi plus my reference angle. 2.301 and not 3.983. Didn't remember the other one. 3.983. And I'm going to make another note here. Most of the questions you get will ask you to find the solutions between 0 to 2 pi. Finding the solutions between 0 and 2 pi is very helpful for the general solution. But once I find my solutions between 0 and 2 pi, I'm going to go back and read my question and go, oh, look at the domain. I'm going to highlight it here. Look at the domain that they gave us. Negative pi over 2 to 3 pi over 2. That negative pi over 2 to 3 pi over 2, I like to think of it like this. So here's my domain. Negative pi over 2 less than or equal to x less than or equal. Did it have all those equal signs? No, of course not. Less than 3 pi over 2. Okay? What I like to do, because we think of angles in standard position, and angles in standard position start at 0. So when I have a domain like this, can you see that this includes, in the positive direction, 0 to 3 pi over 2, and in the negative direction, 0 to negative pi over 2. If I draw a picture of this domain on my unit circle, that means I'm looking here, anything up to there, and I'm also looking for anything in there. So when my domain goes from negative to positives, I always split it up and think about my positives separately and my negatives separately. Okay? In this question, what did I get for answers? I got an answer in quadrant 2, and this answer was in quadrant 3. Are those two answers correct, or do I have to change any of them? They're fine, right? Because quadrant 2 fits in my blue one. Quadrant 3 fits in my blue one. Even though I had part of my domain as negative angles in quadrant 4, cos was negative and doesn't ever happen in quadrant 4. So there's lots of things that we have to think about. What's that?
Question to the nearest 100.
Did I write something down?
No, I'm talking about the question. The top.
The top?
Yeah.
Question 2?
Yeah.
What
to
about?
the nearest 100. When you said
Here, I'll come back.
say to the nearest 100, that's also the other 2.30.
Oh, yes. Thank you. That's the other thing. That's the other thing to notice. We read the question again, and it says to the nearest hundredth. I rounded to 3 decimal places, so I actually don't need, it should just be 2.30 and 3.98 to the nearest hundredth. Thank you. Yeah, so there's lots of little details. We have to reread things again, because we're going to check our domain, check what they ask us to round to. So it's good practice that once you're done a question, to read it again and make sure you've got all those details. Some people, right? Sometimes what people like to do is they like to bring highlighters to quizzes, and they're like, ooh, I'm going to highlight that to make sure I see that again later, because I'm going to forget about that. I'm going to highlight my domain, make sure I think about that later when I reread it. So you sort of give yourself reminders as you're reading the questions of what you need to check afterwards as well. Are we done? No, we've done to the nearest hundredth. We did this, but it says also to write the general solution. How do you do a general solution? Well, first, you solve between 0 and 2 pi, and I made a green note. I did that. Those are my solutions between 0 and 2 pi. Then you take all of those solutions, so my 2.30 and my 3.98, and add 2k pi plus 2k pi, and write all the coterminal ones with those angles, and I have my general solution. Part B. Part B says, to the nearest degree, solve the equation root 2 cosecant x equals negative 5. So again, I'm solving for x. It's inside cosecant. So I can get cosecant x by itself by dividing both sides by the square root of 2. The easiest thing to do from this point is to know that cosecant of x is related to sine of x. You can either change the cosecant of x to 1 over sine of x, but most people take the shortcut and change it to sine of x. The angle stays the same, but the ratio flips. And now we have to find our reference angle. Okay? I notice in my question that the question was in degrees. So on my calculator, however you have to do it on your calculator, my calculator was in radians. I'm going to switch back to degrees and push enter. And I'll go sine inverse of positive square root of 2 divided by 5. 16.5 0.430 to 3 decimal places. So again, I started with 3 decimal places. I started with 3 decimal places, but I read the question later, and it does say to the nearest degree. Now, sign is negative. Sign is negative in quadrants 2 and quadrants 4. So I'm going to take my reference angle and in quadrant 2 I would do 180 degrees minus my reference angle.
Isn't sign positive in quadrant 2?
Right. Oh yes, thank you. It's quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. So I'm going to take 180 plus my reference angle and 360 minus my reference angle. Should have used the store button, but it's okay. And to the nearest degree, this one will be 196, and this one will be 344. So to the nearest degree, I have 196 degrees and 344 degrees. And again, I'm going to make a note. This is solutions once around the circle. That's between 0 degrees and 360 degrees. Is that what this question asked? Take out my highlighter. No, my domain was from negative 180 to 180. And highlight the fact that it says nearest degree, so we've done that already. But we need to go from negative 180 to 180. So let's just think about what that domain means. Again, I would think positively that's 0 to 180 degrees, negatively that's 0 to 180 in the negative direction. With a picture, my positive angles I'm looking here, my negative angles I'd be looking here. And where were my answers? This one was in quadrant 3. This one was in quadrant 4. My answers in quadrant 3 and 4, do you see they should be negative, not positive, based on my picture. So now my actual answers for x, what is coterminal with 344? Negative 16. What's coterminal with 196? Well, I could do 196 minus 360, or I could also do 180 minus my reference angle of 16, and then make that negative, and get negative 164 degrees. So these are my answers. I'm going to circle them. Those are my answers in the domain rounded correctly. Does it ask for the general solution as well? Yes. I think in the textbook, for the general solution, they use the negative ones. For me personally, I like to use my positive ones from 0 to 2 pi. So I'm going to use 196 and 344. Add 360 degrees times k. Add 360 degrees times k. Where k is an integer. You can circle questions 6 and 7 for practice.